Welcome, friends, to Tanked Up, the podcast all about video games and beer. I'm one of your hosts, Ben. It's episode 322, we believe. And I'm here with Aadil.
Hey!
It could be a different episode. Who knows? There's absolutely zero way to check, so it doesn't really matter. Should we open some beers?
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect.
I didn't pre-start like you did.
Yes. I mean, there's such a small amount left in this one. I'll just neck it back.
I have a beer from Siren.
Oh.
It's the Siren's... Oh.
For those of you on the stream and eagle-eyed viewers on the YouTube, you'll notice that Lucy joined us and then disappeared.
I might cut that part out if I remember. Right. I have a beer from Siren. It's the Old Street Brewery. Lovely fat cat.
Nice fat cat, yep.
It's the Sound of Bliss. Hazy Pale Ale, 5.5%. A vibrant, juicy pale ale brewed with our friends at Old Street Brewery. This beer is beautifully soft and features a dream hop contingent of Galaxy Nelson Citra and Idaho's Heaven, delivering all the tropical aromas, ripe stone fruit flavors, and pithy bitterness we could ask for. I don't think I said that in the right intonation, but I didn't pre-read it because pre-reading's for jumps.
Exactly.
But yeah, so Siren, Old Street Brewery, Sound of Bliss, Hazy Pale, which sounds great for the day we had here in Bristol, which was fucking gorgeous.
Yeah, it was. It was really nice today. Which is a change from the last couple of days, which has been absolute showers and then a lovely afternoon. I'm also going for a pale ale. My beers this week are from Sainsbury's because I haven't had a chance to go anywhere, and we dropped in to go and pick up a few bits. So I'm like, I better buy some beers. The one I am currently drinking, as I mentioned to Aadil earlier, is Whetstone from Brewery. Yeah. Not that big on that one. It's fine. It's fine for a 7.2% beer. But I'm going to drink Hush, which is a pale ale from Unity. It's 5%. They say, shh, this beer contains UK hops. Juicy pale ale brewed in our house style, but with UK Chinook hops from Brookhouse hops in the Whirlpool. Followed by a hefty dry hop of Mosaic and Vic's Secret. That is everything. There's loads of little bits on, loads of little logos and things. It looks like it was brewed about a month ago. So yeah, the 14th of April. So, reasonably fresh for getting into Sainsbury's and being on the shelves. There weren't many of them left. The craft beer section in the... I mean, it's not really local to me at all, but the Sainsbury's that we went into as we passed it didn't have a huge selection in. Lots of space, but not very many in there. So people are obviously out and about buying their craft beers from supermarkets still.
Fair enough.
I should get this pulled, and we'll come back to you for the Siren collaboration.
Yeah. I mean, the flavor text did not lie. It is lovely tropical. I would say there's underneath the tropical, which is like, think passion fruit, slight pineapple, like slight acidity. There's also a sort of a ripened, almost stewed stone fruit, just sort of keeping it, bringing that tropical sort of down, giving it a little more volume, but also nice and crisp smelling. Almost want to say like a lemon zest, sort of, that crispiness.
Yeah.
Ooh, 5.5%. This could go down real quick. It's not a lot ahead. I've totally forgot. I was so keen to drink it. It is a hazy. It's quite, I would say, orangey straw. Which is a color, as we all know. Yeah. So it kind of feels, mouthfeel wise, like a 4.5 or a 4. Like it's quite thin feeling, and I think that's just because the taste is quite zippy at the start, and then it has all these sort of stronger tastes like the tropical, the stone fruit. Those are coming through exactly as the tin said, but none of it's like really like wide. It's all quite thin in the sense, so it feels like it could be a lighter beer.
Okay.
And it's 5.5, which is 20% more than I think it is. I can do the maths. It's really good. It's really refreshing. I'm really liking, yeah, those stone fruits sort of sitting underneath, giving it a really solid shell of a taste for um, that the more tropical tastes are sort of sitting on top of, and then it does really taste. It finishes with a bit of a like almost a citrus sweetness, but also that's like the long finish. But right at the tail end of the finish, you do get this like, oh shoot, we were zesting this orange and dug a little too much in the peel. And we're getting a bitterness from like a navel orange, so not too tart, but yeah, just like a bitterness that sits just sort of right at the moment where most of the taste is withdrawing. You get this hit of bitter, and then it finishes lightly sweet with this bitterness sort of lingering. But as I've sat with it, the sweetness is sort of still reasonably new each sip, but that bitterness I'm getting a bit more used to. And it really does feel like it's coming in as a wave and then kind of slowly drawing out with the finish, while the sweetness sort of sits the whole time. So it feels like it's almost getting a bit sweeter over time, but that's just because the sweetness is lasting a bit longer than the rest.
Yeah.
And again, it's really light sweetness. I'm not saying it's like, it's not like, oh god, it finishes sweet. I'm just like there's this light sweetness that just sort of retains throughout the finish. I will say, I was expecting it maybe to be a more of a like a huge hit of tropical, but actually it's a nice, which could go either way, but it's nothing close to like a juice bomb or anything. It's a nice, it's a nice solid beer that's like, here's some tropical flavors. Here's some. I said the nose had some stewed stone fruits. I'd say the stewiness is just in that moment of the nose, and then yeah, it's just really well balanced. And then, like I said, has this really interesting finish where it sort of trades off moments between this sort of stark, peely, pithy bitterness and then this light sweetness to sort of offset it. Quite tasty.
Nice.
I know Siren really well. I don't know Old Street Brewery, but based on this, I would definitely go seek them out.
Good. A solid start. Nice. What did I read on this Hush from Unity? Dry hop with Mosaic and Vic Secret. I'm getting a lovely like candy sweetness on the nose. Very fragrant as well. Kind of almost that like a little bit on the edge of sort of floral. But definitely just that little bit of kind of candy. Really, it's very, very sweet, which is nice in the nose. The head poured massively, so let it kind of
it looks gorgeous.
Let it settle. It's a lovely color, a little bit more orange to me than maybe it's going a little bit lighter on the screen, but lovely nose. Okay, so that sweetness is washed out completely in the flavour.
Oh, really?
There's barely any sweetness in that at all. Okay, maybe the whetstone is pushing a little bit of that out. It was a very malty beer, very sweet, malty, sticky kind of beer. This is much lighter, a little thinner as well, and it has this kind of piney bitterness on the back end, but you can really get the I was going to say you can really get the kind of the Vic Secret in there, but actually it might just be the Chinook kind of giving it that more earthy kind of bitter edge to it. So it is in sort of, it is a pale ale, and it's very, very light in a lot of aspects, but actually there's this nice cutting bitterness to it as well, which isn't too harsh. It's not too strong. It's actually really well balanced in its bitterness for a pale. You know, I love a bit of beer, but when you want something a little bit lighter, having that big hit of bitterness isn't great. This is really, really good in that sense. It's a bit of a shame that the sweetness is kind of washed out as much. You know, if it had started off with that and then gone into this bitterness, this would have been really good.
Interesting. That sounds quite tasty.
It just kind of, it almost starts off a little bit kind of flat. Maybe a little bit of orange in there, maybe a little bit of mango as well, but quite weak. Very sort of, you know, like orange or you know, squash, really. Like cordial drink rather than a juice. And even then, very watered down. But it kind of almost redeems itself with this bitterness that just sort of lifts up and something like, oh, where's this come from? Okay. I mean, very, very easy to drink because it is like cordial with a bitterness to it. A little bit of carbonation, but not much. Not enough to kind of push those fruity flavours kind of straight away. And again, it's not that kind of, you know, it's not crisp. It's not like you're going to be sat in the garden on an afternoon and go, oh, this is very refreshing. It's just a little bit weak and a little bit flat to start off with. And the bitterness does redeem it very slightly. But I just need something a little bit bigger. And it's only 5%, but just something that little bit bigger. I'm finding this a lot with beers, and I don't know whether it's just me, but the lower ABV beers just aren't quite hitting at the moment. And I had a bunch of alcohol-free beers at the weekend as well, and only,
that's quite low.
Yeah, that's incredibly low. Well, they were
0.5%.
0.5. I think one of them was 0.4. I can't tell you which one. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure one of them was 0.4. But yeah, out of all of them, the Lucky Saint, which is like a pilsner, was the best because it tasted like a pilsner. You know, there was absolutely no difference for that one that I could kind of find. But the other ones, which tried to be pales and IPAs and things, just didn't quite have that body to them, didn't have that hit to them. And this feels very much like that, like a very weak beer. But yeah, that bitterness just lifts it a little bit. I think that's probably all I can say about it at the moment. I'll keep drinking it and see if that changes as I'm chugging.
Chugging, you
but
say?
Who knows? Chugging. It will be going back very quickly, I think. But yeah. Hush. You can't see that because of the light. Hush.
Oh, it's a lovely can.
Yeah.
I like the
nice.
tambourine.
Almost Simpsons-esque hands as well. Not four-fingered, but kind of just... You know,
yeah, yellow, like...
in the way that they're kind of drawn.
Yeah, yellow and rounded.
So yeah, there we go. There are beers that we'll be enjoying for the next 40 minutes, half an hour or so. And we'll talk about some games for the episode. As our first episode of the week, we'll be talking about what we've been playing, I think, which, you know, there's a fair amount of between the two of us this week. I've got a couple of games to talk about. Aadil, I know you did a first looks this week as well. Where should we start?
Did we? Well, but I did one last week, and we didn't. Did we talk about the Remnant game?
No, we had Kimberly Craft Beer Pinup on as our guest, and we didn't get into kind of what we'd been playing too much. So start with that. What was that one?
Remnants of the Rift.
This was the preview.
Yeah, so it's definitely, I think it just came out in early access last Thursday when I streamed it. I'm cheekily gonna, because I'm a professional, I already clearly have. Oh, I forgot. I don't have the. It's not on Steam. It was a demo that they emailed Google directly.
Yeah.
Which means I don't have the patter about. But basically, it's a really neat art style worth looking up. Kind of somewhere between. It's almost like some cell shading and some like Dexter's Lab style animation with like harsher angles and single and like not complex color palettes. But you are essentially some sort of weird bounty hunter in a world where there was a cataclysm and weird things happened, and there's like underneath the world is this weird is a series of basically a weird dimension, and as you descend, you interact with more and more of these weird beasts, and they've changed the life of humanity. But
Mm-hmm.
you're like a bounty hunter, and you start off, and you're just running a mission, and then the guy who gives you the ability to go enter the rift, basically. And then you've got a couple friends, and then there's another faction. It doesn't really matter so much, I guess. The plot at this stage is just like, oh, you are running missions and trying to gain favor, and basically what that means is you. It's like a roguelike, with a procedural generated grid levels, which are about, I would say, 15 by 15 squares.
Okay.
Roughly. And you have a little modulator which has like 3 or 4 lives or hit points, and you have to go as far down as you can get before your modulator breaks.
Right. Okay.
And you're gonna be gaining sort of in run currency that you can then sometimes like. So you finish a level. So a level, I'll explain the combat later, but basically you kill all the things, you go down a level, and it says, do you want to get like, you have 2 choices. You go for a mod or some money, and then sometimes it'll take you to a shop, and the shop will be these 2 ladies who are clearly part of the plot, and they will take the money, and you can buy like re-up your health and your modulator if it got hit, or you could get sort of a perk for one of your weapons or actions.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can also spend the mods at the to upgrade things like your gun. And so and then crucially, you can also trade your in-game currency or your in-run currency for the game currency that sort of sits above it, and that lets you permanently upgrade stuff, because
Cool.
the run upgrades don't last. So a simple couple of loops, right? And you're just trying to last as long as you can. And then obviously one of the first things you do is, so you start with like a gun and a dash move. And so it's like if Final Fantasy Tactics didn't only paused when you had to choose what move you're going to use.
Okay.
So it's a tactical game, sort of SRPG style, except everyone basically has a frame around the tile they're on. It sort of fills up, so it goes left, right, like left, up, right, down, right, and that tells you when they're going to do a move, and it'll even have a flashing yellow arrow if they're going to move that way or attack that way. So
Right.
you have information of what they're going to do, and you can, during that time, you can use your D-pad to shift around, and then hit them while they're waiting, and then meanwhile your moves are on their own timers, and they are sort of at the top left of your HUD. So you can tell how many hit points things have, so you can sword attack, dash through, then shoot it with your gun. It has 3 hit points, it's dead before it did anything. Or you could do a couple things, and then you have to kind of kite it around, and then all the enemies sort of tend to gravitate towards the modulator thing that you need to protect. Really seems simple, but it's really nice, and like you start out with only a couple of weapons, and it's quite simple, and then you clearly get to a point where the devs are like, you can't get past here, because suddenly a whole bunch of new enemies come, and you're like, I can't kill these things. But you lose your run, and then you go back. So it was about, they said the demo should take you about 2 to 3 hours, and I finished it pretty much at the 2 hour 5 minute mark on my stream. And it was like, yep, 2 hours, cool. And there was a whole bunch of stuff I could have kept running to like upgrade. I didn't obviously get all the upgrades that were available, but I did get all the moves. So one of them is like a dash. So it's, you move 3 squares in any direction, and you do a damage to anything in the middle too, basically.
Yep.
Actually, it might be 3. And then you can get a perk that shortens that or lengthens that. I can't remember. It's been a couple weeks. But basically, but you can't. You can only dash where your end space is free.
Mm-hmm.
So it can hurt two enemies in a row if you plan it right. Otherwise, it can also help you just get closer to an enemy because it's quicker than running. So sometimes you're using it as just a dash because that guy is about to start hitting the modulator. That's no good. The modulator can get upgraded with things like a shield,
Right.
which regenerates only every 30 seconds. So basically, if you mess up, as long as you only mess up partially, you won't lose permanent lives on the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really fun. A nice. I think the VOD should be up by the time. Oh wait, no, it'll be up on the weekend. Basically, cool. I think. And it's worth taking a look at. It was a really fun game. I'm really curious how far it'll go and like the different types of enemies. Because it was, you had guys with a whole bunch of health bars, guys who, again, what I like is it telegraphs all the information. So it's like this guy is revving up, and suddenly all 9 squares, like so the grid around him the grid basically a grid around him 3x3 is now highlighted, and he's going to do a swipe attack to all of that. But you also know, based on his square, when he's going to do it. So you can tempt fate, come in, punch him, shoot him, and then withdraw, shoot him. And if you mistime it, you're going to get beat up. But also, when you get beat up, you just kind of phase out. Mm-hmm. So it'll reset you to your starting position, but you'll be basically there'll be a blue, a red, and a white silhouette of your character, sort of mid-jump, and they slowly come back together. And so you just have to watch as the rest of the game state progresses, and you're like, come on, come on. So yeah, it was tons of fun. I really dig it. There's a couple things if you were a grid run by a D-pad or a joystick, how would you orient the grid? If you answered X and Y axis the same on the screen, you'd be wrong. It's on a diagonal.
It's almost isometric. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're still moving left, right, up, down.
Yeah, so it's down, left, and then left is.
Well, so it says right at the beginning, pick your movement scheme, and it's like either left is down or left is left or whatever you want to say it. It's the 2 different ways of interpreting the diamond, basically. Mm-hmm. I really struggled with it, but also I went in the menu. It was I can't I picked at the beginning. I picked the one because it gives you little do you want to do this? And I was I don't know, this seems fine. But I was using the analog stick, and then I was struggling with consistently aiming in the wrong direction or moving. Mostly it was moving, because with aiming it telegraphs your move in the same way, right? It shows 3 little with your gun has a range of 3, so it'll show the 3 dots and spaces in front of you. It'll do a dashed line signifying your gun will reach this far. Mm-hmm. Or if it's the dash, it'll be the this outline of the tiles for 3 or 4 spots. Nice and simple, really well telegraphed. But then, so it's easy to see, I've done the wrong thing. But if I'm trying to quickly dodge to the left of the thing, and then I run into it or run the wrong way, it's But then I went in the menu, and it was no, I guess I got to choose this right at the beginning. Nevermore. I assume that's just because it's a super alpha build, right? It's a demo coming at alpha. I think they're aiming for early access, or they might be there now, actually.
So on Steam, you can download a demo.
And probably a cleaner build of what I played.
I mean, it's probably the same one, I would think. But it's currently in Kickstarter.
That's what I was what is it? It's not early access, it's Kickstarter.
It's Kickstarter. Right. Launched into Kickstarter a week ago, around the 3rd of May.
Yeah, that's when I played it. I played it day 1 of Kickstarter.
Yeah, so again, you can play a demo over on Steam if you like. I really like the art style to it.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah.
You see how it's kind of hard to describe, but
it is very hard to describe. Yes. I think it's one of those where the closest amalgam in play style is Transistor, but art style wise, it's a little bit more like cartoony, a little bit more pop than that.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's what I was
also,
saying. Like Dexter's Lab or Samurai Jack, like it's got the like
yes,
sort of
yes,
like exaggerated features,
hmm
and simple color palette.
yes, those kind of like nice thick black lines, like outlines and things like that. And
Yeah.
on Steam there is an image of a room, like it looks like a lounge or the front entrance to a flat or something like that. And
Yeah,
it's
it's
very
your
kind
home
of
base.
60s, almost 50s, really, with
I
some of
think
the
that's
artwork
why
on
I
the
was thinking
wall
of
and stuff.
Dexter's Lab as well,
Yeah,
because it's
yeah,
just got that like post deco, but like
yes.
mod. Yeah.
So yeah, that looks very cool. I'm gonna download this demo.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
I
check
mean,
it
I'm
out.
glad that the demo's up because like I said, it was a lot of fun, and there's no reason not to at least run the demo, because it's short and sweet. Like,
Mm.
and also I really like this sort of approach to you are doing your FF tactics thing, but
Hmm.
also it reminds me of like the FF7's version of what is that thing called? So in all the Final Fantasy before 7 were like strict. It's your choice. Game pauses. And then we had like the active time battles (ATB)
Hmm.
in FF7, where it's like you have to like hammer on your buttons because things are still happening,
Hmm.
and that was like some people really hated it, but that was a really interesting way of having game choice pressure without changing the system a lot. And this feels like that sort of thing, but obviously. So what I neglected to mention was when you are picking your moves. So you basically hit a button saying move, and then you can hit your LBRB to like move between the moves that you have available, and then you hit A or something to use the move. That's when the game kind of pauses. So you're never in a situation where you're like, I didn't get to. It's not like I'm trying to like FF15, right? I'm not like I have to know my buttons. I'm not. They're not layering on
You're not chaining
Twitch
combos and
gameplay.
stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or just like being quick at things.
Yep.
You can be like, I am here. I need to use a move. I hit the button. I can also just take a break for a second and
Mm.
plan the rest of things. It's just when I'm moving around the world is not paused, and I really like that balance. And I think that that's the strength of the game so far is that the combat system is really well balanced with this notion of planning, but not for too long,
Hmm.
right? Like you and it I mean, I guess you could just like go like sort of proto pause it a bunch if you wanted, but like it really encourages the active planning, but without having to actively be the best at pulling it off.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nice. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. I like that. Maybe it's a little bit forgiving in that sort of sense as well. It also reminds me very much of things like the Banner Saga, at least in the idea of it being this kind of grid-based,
Yeah.
isometric kind of battlefield, and you're
I mean, I always
sort
go
of
to
trying to
FFT,
get,
but it's
yeah,
probably a better, more recent example.
yeah, you're trying to be a little bit more kind of tactical in what you're doing, but also I think a recent game which does a similar thing, slightly different in terms of how you pick stuff, which you played, which was fights in tight spaces.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
again, it's not quite grid based. I mean, it is grid based, but it's not an equilateral grid. If you know what I
Yeah,
mean,
because it's
it's
based
kind
on
of based within a
rooms,
room. Yes,
and
yes.
and a lot more of the moves can be change where you end up. Well, like
Yes.
except at least thus far, except for the dash, it's you are controlling where you are,
Mm.
and you face away and do a move. The dash is the one exception, but like it's tight fights in tight spaces is definitely kind of much more of a bounce around
Mm-hmm.
game as well. Like you're trying to chain your moves based on the cards you have to to get around. So you might use a suboptimal hit because it gets you from point A to point B,
Yeah.
but doesn't really hurt the guy you kind of wish you could hit with the next move, but because then you can kill the next guy. Well, you wouldn't have to worry about that. The one thing that like basically the way you lose on this game is by not by suboptimally planning uh and the enemy that's closest to your modulator starting to hit it.
Mm-hmm.
So what I like is you're like, that guy has the most health. He's a pain. His type is a pain to kill. I'm gonna go start with him, but then like these two or three little guys come in. You have to switch your tactics because they've made a beeline for the modulator. And then later, in the very end of the demo, there's a level where you're like, I have two modulators,
Oh.
which share a health pool. And you're
Brilliant.
like, oh,
Again, it's one of those games that almost epitomizes like the old basketball saying: the best defense is a good offense.
yeah.
It very much feels like you are not on the back foot, but you're constantly having to think about your modulator and where you're positioned and how you react, kind of that, but in a very aggressive kind of way.
And I think that's why, even though you could technically just pause it and like, all right, I'm gonna use this. I'm entering the move menu. Okay, so the optimal thing would be do this, this, this. These have these many second timers. Blah blah blah. Like you could do that, but the game just like the pacing of the game really doesn't encourages you to just kind of go. And like a few times, like even after 2 hours, I was still like only minorly aware of which moves would run out. Like I mean, like
Yeah.
my subconsciously, I was like, this move will come back quicker. But I wasn't thinking, I wasn't being so strategic that I was like, it was more of, I have these moves up now, and so I can sword slash is right beside the guy. I can sword slash this guy, turn around and shoot that guy, and then I'll figure out what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't like I was like, oh, but actually I should shoot that guy and sword slash him because the sword slash comes back in 3 seconds, and I could just walk over to the second guy and then slash him or whatever, right? Like it didn't really, I didn't feel the need to suddenly try and like think of all of the variables, like
Yes.
how long it takes. And I think that's good. And if it gets to a point where you need to, that's fine, so long as it builds you up that way. Because the way it's built right now is really good for encouraging that sort of more off the cuff type,
Yes.
sort of not frenetic, but like real time play, which is
Mm-hmm.
what the sort of mechanic is built around. Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
I'm gonna let the cat out because he's been yowling.
Oh.
I hear you.
It's time for him to leave. He's had enough of adult shit for the day. Obviously, as cats are. So, I might jump in.
Yeah, please do. I
Um,
mean, we don't have a set topic for episode 2, so we could just talk games for both.
yeah. I mean, I have a couple of games which I've delved into a reasonable amount. I might push the Dorfromantik chat, which we were going to have like 2 weeks ago, because Lucy got a code. I'd previously got a code for it.
I recall, yeah.
When Lucy got the code, it's one of those, hey, here's like an early build, but if you put in the code on Steam, here's like the press build for it. And I'm like, I wonder if I put the press code into my Steam, it'll work as well. And it did. Like, yeah,
That is how the beta codes work,
yes,
yeah.
so I also
Which is
have
fine
access to
because
that.
they gave you a code
absolutely,
specifically
absolutely.
to preview. Yeah.
And before Lucy and I get into a bigger conversation about Dorfromantik, you can go back to a previous episode where I talked about kind of like initial impressions about the like early access version. It might not even be early access. Is it? Maybe, who knows? But it's come out. It's like fully released now, and I really like it. It's one of those games where you can just be like, I will just lose 20 minutes to this, and essentially you're just laying down hexagonal tiles, which have different things on different edges. So you might have a building, you might have the woods, you might have a farm, you might have a river that runs through the tile, and you're basically creating a landscape. and trying to tie in tiles to each other. And there's little quests which might say, right, we want you to link 25 houses or 15 farm tiles or farm spaces, and things like that. And you're trying to create a puzzle almost to keep linking all of these things and getting more tiles to your set so you can keep going and keep going and keep going.
And they're hexes, right?
Yes, they're hexagonal, yes. I think I'm up to about my highest score. I must have had this for a year probably now. My highest score is about 19,000, I think. I seem to have hit a plateau of that is roughly where I hit almost every time now, like 17, 18, 19,000, around about that kind of thing. And there's something in my mind that has only just recently switched where I'm like, oh, I need more houses, place that tile here. I need more houses, place that tile here. I need more farms, place that tile here. Actually, I'm finding that as I'm building through, that a tile will pop up and like, rather than just adding onto the house, actually that one's much better placed here because this edge matches, this edge matches, and this edge matches.
So it's like trying to preempt the next sort of...
Yes, yeah. And I'd be really interested to know whether the game gives you a set, you know, if it gives you 50 tiles, whether it gives you a set 50 tiles, or whether that adapts on the fly based on what you have put together. So suddenly a tile will be like, well, one edge is a forest, one edge is a town, and the rest are completely blank. And you know that actually up here, you've got a forest tile next to a little town, and you can just link that one. That will then make the two tiles you've linked it next to perfect, which means that every edge is matched perfectly, and that also gives you more tiles. And so there's lots of different little bits of play around Dorfromantik, and I really, really like it. Because I say, you can just lose 20 minutes and be like, oh, I better start working again. just wanted to relax for 5 minutes. Oh, no, great, get back to work.
It vaguely reminds me of, what was that? There was this game from like 2 years ago I did on First Looks. It was called like Hex. Oh, I'm not going to remember its name.
A similar kind of thing where you're building out that kind of like landscape, yes.
Except it was...
You had quests in that one, right?
Yeah, it was Hexia. And it was not ready for prime time in the sense that it didn't have that depth. And I recall it was less sort of... I like this idea of like the quests are like chaining and matching and very puzzly, which makes sense because it's like a tabletop. It looks, you know, like a puzzle. But in Hexia, if I recall, it was like manage your kingdom stuff, and it had like events pop up every so often that would like be, oh, your kingdom blah, and it just had like some severe just dead game state, like, oh, it's over now, sorry, you lose. And you're like, okay, but I still don't know why. Oh, cool, 3 times in a row. I recall. I think there might be a VOD on our channel, Out of Lives, youtube.com/Out of Lives Network. But it was not great, and this seems the opposite of that. It seems really interesting, and like I said, I think a lot of it has to do with leaning into what makes these gameplays and this design unique and interesting, right? Rather than these are tiles, but they're towards some other gameplay purpose, like balancing villages versus potential bad guys who don't show up on the map, etc. Right? Like things that are happening in the background that you don't really see via the map because they're not directly related to what you're observing, which I think was my biggest problem with Hexia. Yeah,
and I think even though on Steam it says the publisher is Tucana Interactive, but it says developer Tucana Interactive, which isn't right. And again, you'll probably pick up from the aesthetic. I'm pretty sure that Dorfromantik is made or was developed by not a single person, but it started off as kind of like a just like an idea from is it? I might be getting mixed up. I'm trying to find some information on it. Wikipedia says Dorfromantik was developed by 4 German students studying at HTW Berlin. It lists their names: Luca Langberg, Sandro Huberg, Zvausch, and Timo Falk. The 4 founded an independent studio named Tucana Interactive.
Tucana, I was going to say.
Cool. So they made it. Okay, brilliant. I'm thinking about something else.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, it seems really cool.
It is very cool. I'm going back to it almost daily. Not quite.
Really? Okay. I was about
daily.
to ask, like, how often are you going back versus, like, and how much of that is, oh, well, we're coverage reasons. But it sounds like you're well past coverage reasons.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And it's built now out to the full version. So there is the version that I'm talking about, where you have a set amount of tiles and you kind of playing through. But there's also things like creative mode where you can just keep playing, and a few other kind of modes in there. Or you can also kind of like unlock biomes as well based upon the quests that you kind of do. And you can then just basically be like, right, I'm going to turn off all but one biome and just build out a map which is just this one aesthetic as well. So they've fleshed it out quite nicely too, over the year. And that came out again only like 2 weeks ago as the full version on the 28th of April.
Yeah, I was going to say it's quite quote unquote new, right?
But yeah, I've really been enjoying that. And yeah, it's kind of very relaxing. I think that's one of the things about it. It is a bit of a puzzle game. It's not a city builder, but it is definitely an environment kind of builder where you're trying to link all of these spaces. And as I say, it's a bit more of a puzzle game than that, but in a very relaxing way. There's no rush to it. The music is very chilled, very serene.
Yeah, I guess I think that sort of hits on what made me what frustrated me with Hexia was that there were like definite failed game states, etc. And this seems like, so you're saying there's these quests, but how do you stop winning? Like, what is the
so you have a set amount of tiles. So when you start the game, I don't know how many it is. You might have about 50 tiles, and you just basically lay them down. And every time you either you surround one tile perfectly. So you've matched a forest to a forest and a town to a town and those kinds of things. You've matched it perfectly, and it will then give you extra tiles. And I think a perfect tile gives you 1 tile. But then you do quests. So you might get 1 tile and it will be 3 houses on said tile, and say, well, I want you to match 22 houses together. So then you have to link 22 of those houses, or 22 farmland, or 350 trees.
Oh, because wow.
If one tile has like 3 edges covered in trees, individually it's probably got about 30 trees on it or something like that, So you're trying to link a lot of these things together, and by then doing that, you'll get a little flag that pops up when it says, yeah, you've linked 300 trees together, cool. And that gives you a bunch of tiles. And quite cleverly, the game also gives you a bunch of tiles if you close that off. So if you've got your forest is down here and it's open on like 3 edges, if you close off those 3 edges, that flag will disappear because you can't add to that forest anymore. So you've completed the quest, but you've also closed it off as well. So that then gives you more tiles. But it adds a level of difficulty because suddenly you'll get a forest tile that will say, we want 1,000 trees to be linked together. Like, well, I've just closed off the 800 that I had, so now I've just got to start again. So it kind of presents a bit of difficulty for you. But again, in a very chilled, kind of way. Never in a you must get 1,000 trees. It's just here, do this if you want to. Otherwise, just link tiles together and don't worry about it. So yeah,
that sounds great.
it's a very relaxing time, which is why it's so easy to lose 20 minutes to it. It's a game that I've kind of been working and gone, I'll just play. I just need to clear my head a little bit. I've been looking at what I've been looking at for the last couple of hours. I need to just kind of be somewhere else. I'll go and make a coffee, come back, and I'll be like, right, 5 minutes of this. And as I say, suddenly 20 minutes have gone. And you're like, oh, I've started a new run. I'll stop now. Like, that's my cut-off point. Like,
right.
Yeah, I've done enough. I failed this. Not failed, but I've got a score of like 17,000 or something. I will now do some more work for a little bit. And I won't come back to it today. Because I know I'll just lose another 20 minutes. I'll come back to it tomorrow, maybe, and start another run. And that one might take me, a few days to kind of get through. But yeah, it's really good. I think it's one that, because I like a city builder.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of systems and linking stuff together. It doesn't go any as deep as it's like City Skylines. It's not that kind of game,
right?
But it just scratches that same kind of itch enough. But it's also scratching the puzzle game itch enough, and it's also scratching the this is a very chilled experience itch enough that you will keep going.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Let's do our viewers a service and say that it is currently $10.99 on the Steam store.
Nice.
That's 10.99 English quidlets.
I was gonna say, we're rounding out the hour pretty swiftly on a couple of games. Do we do a little review roundup potentially for this?
Oh, review roundup on Romantik?
Going to into Dorfromantik, but it's all just thumbs up. It's all recommended.
Oh no, I'll find you some. There's 411 negative reviews, motherfucker.
Yeah, overwhelmingly positive. 14,000.
153 versus 411. Oh, this is blah on the 12th of May, 1.3 hours. Not bad, but there isn't much here. If you're looking for something to simultaneously engage and disengage your mind, this might work for you. That's a negative review. I mean, I thought it was interesting because it's kind of exactly what you were saying in the sense of it scratching some itches, but it's not like throwing you through the paces.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and then Truck Fist spent 5 hours on it. Says feels more like a demo than a game. It's a fun little sandbox. Just don't expect any payoff or satisfaction. The treadmill vibe kind of undermines its chill nature. On a early access review. But basically, it seems like people are complaining that it's not a building sim. Not diverse enough to be a city builder. Not challenging or complicated enough to be a puzzle game. Not enough content. That's basically what people don't like. No content, insanely repetitive. I'm not gonna read these people's names. So, one, sure, yep, might not be for you guys. That's cool. For you, Ben, you've played many hours. What do you say to not enough content? Can you?
I've played nearly 55 hours.
That is more than 4.9. I've done the math.
I mean, what? Go and play a city builder.
Yeah, I just wondered if you.
It's not. I think people are mistaking lack of content for a lack of depth, perhaps. Another review that I just saw basically said nothing happens. I was expecting the game to if I made a rail link between little hamlets, that there'd be an economy between them. It's like, well, that's a fucking that's a completely different kind of game.
Yeah, that's at no point in my mild perusal of this and your description did I think that there was going to be separate and then combined economies.
Yes. I mean, there's a potential that stuff like that could be built on top of this, but I don't think that was ever the idea from the outset. I mean, potentially it could have been. It may be very difficult to do, and they've decided to cut that back. But the idea that people are like, well, this game doesn't do this, and I want it to do this. It's like, well, that's not the game, motherfucker.
Yeah, I'm just curious on the is it that there are 3 or 4 things that are quite repetitive, like quest types and stuff, which is not a problem. It's just like, okay, that's the depth of the game. I'm just trying to figure out where these complaints are coming from. Like, some of this is just like, I wanted a different type of game.
Yes.
But could you see where people might be thinking, I like this style of game, but I wish there was just more types of things? Or is that just...
I can absolutely see that.
But
that will always exist almost with every game that's kind of almost ever made. If it is a smaller indie game, which only has a certain budget and has to have a workable scope, that people will always turn around and go, oh, but if it just had this. And that will always exist, right? Unless we get into like, even then, I was going to say, even on bigger budget games, you get to like Hitman. People are like, oh, but only if I could do this. And the Hitman devs are very much like, well, yeah, we will try and, that makes sense. We will try and see what we can do to kind of facilitate that and see if that could be in the next game or something like this. Whereas with this, I think it's not that there's a lack of content. It is a game which does something, and that is it.
Right.
And if you enjoy it, then you're going to spend 50 odd hours playing it and placing tiles in spaces and wanting that little bit of a puzzle kind of hit. If you don't like that puzzly side of things, then you're probably gonna be going back to action game number 1 instead of playing this. So I mean it's not an unfounded comment, because it is limited in its content.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking was like, so did you get a sense in your many hours of playing that like there wasn't enough variety in like quest types or tile types, or given the type of itch it's scratching, you felt like that's just like, obviously, like there's the generic, I want this game to be more because I like more, but I was just curious whether you sort of felt that repetitiveness, but was just like, I'm okay because I'm doing the thing and it's scratching the itch.
I'm not sure I ever felt the repetitiveness. I think I very much, because the turnover on games is quite quick, unless you're getting, and as I said, I'm hitting like 19,000 points. And I don't know how people, suddenly if people are getting up to like 50,000 points and they're playing on the same kind of map and expanding and stuff, and then suddenly they're like, well, all I've done is just make like stuff, then maybe I can see that if you're kind of good enough that you've just completed it in a sense, then sure, you might feel a little bit frustrated. But I think for me, I never got to that point, and it was always I've run out of tiles, cool, I'll start again. I got this puzzle to that many points, I will see if I can beat that score and how I can do that, because again, nothing is ever that, the placement of tiles, I know the same. You're not presented with the same tile set when you start again. You're presented with a different tile set, so you're always building different things every time. It's still town, forest, rivers, trains, farms. It doesn't deviate from that.
Right, but it's not like there's 3 things or whatever. Like, it's not like there's like 2 things and you're just happy. You personally are happy to chain 12 of the one and then 500 of the other and then 12 of the one again or whatever, right? Yeah. There is variety from your point of view.
Yes. Yeah. Good. Hopefully, Lucy next week will have some further comments on Dorfromantik. Yep. We'll kick off perhaps the episode next week with Lucy's comments on that too, just to see what she thinks. I don't know how many hours she's put in, if any, yet. So we will return to Dorfromantik from Two Corner Interactive next week. Let's finish off this episode.
That's good.
With our beers.
Yay!
Aadil, the Siren, and the Old Street Brewery?
Correct. Old Street, yeah. OSB. Not to be confused with OBS, which is what you're using.
Yes.
It's really good.
Oriented Strand Board, which I also use quite a lot.
Is that an architecty thing?
Yeah, it's a building material, yeah.
Nope, I got nothing. OSB is just not a thing we do in philosophy or logic. Or photography? What was I saying? I like this beer. The bitterness sort of settled out in a nice way. I think halfway through the podcast was probably my favorite point, where the lingering bitterness was less pithy, and I was getting a little more out of it, and the stone fruit was sort of still kind of fresh, versus by the end of the 440ml can, some of the stone fruit taste, just because of sheer exposure to my palate, kind of faded away. But there was this lovely handoff between, yes, that bitter is still there, it's less harsh. So I think the tin says something about pithy, right? It's like, yes, there's that bitterness. It's really bringing this whole taste curve together. And we're having the stone fruit really coming in its own. And not to say that the last third or whatever of the drink was good, but I think that was just such a good moment, like to the point where I almost interrupted our chat to be like, fuck, this beer is really, really good right now. And as we got through and I had these last few sips, I was like, that thing that I wanted to talk about isn't quite there anymore, which is fine, right? Also, I had this 440ml over basically almost an hour. So I think if you got acclimatized to this and then like at the pub or whatever, and then sort of didn't sort of nurse it because you were talking bollocks about video games, you wouldn't hit you would maybe have a few sips of this sort of things have gotten too used to it. I think you could easily sort of not rush, but like have a better pacing through it, and it was really quite excellent at that moment. So it kind of surprised me because I really liked it, and then it was like, oh man, this is great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. For me, the Hush was good in that it maintained its full flavour throughout. It didn't actually, even though it was a bit of a weaker beer to start with, it didn't fade much throughout the can. The kind of the orange was maybe a little bit more pineapple-y, so actually it's maybe a little bit more pineapple and mango kind of combination in there, which felt like it should be that a little bit stronger. And my comments at the start have held through the entire beer, so a little bit weak in its sort of initial mouthfeel and the initial flavour coming through, but that bitterness was solid. Lifted it just that little bit more, and was lasting throughout as well, which was great. That bitterness hasn't faded very much. I take a sip and it's like, there it is, cool, great. And it's gone back very, very well, very, very quickly. As I say, if it had been maybe a little bit more juicy, or had gone kind of like the opposite way, and it was maybe a little bit more carbonated, and whilst the flavours were a little bit more light, it was a little bit more refreshing, I think that would have just made it a touch better for me. Being like a mid-afternoon beer, very refreshing, sat in the garden kind of thing, or just being a little bit more full of flavour, or both of those things together would have been excellent. But it's nice. It's a reasonable beer for supermarket fare, let's say. So yeah, that's Hush from Unity, which is available in all. I'm not going to say all Sainsbury's. I don't know if that's true. Available in the Sainsbury's that I went in. So there you go.
I mean, so at the very least, they'll probably be in like Bristol and most, I would suspect, a big chunk of the Southwest.
I would think most bigger Sainsbury's stores in the Southwest. Unity is Southampton, yeah. So, south. very Southampton is like almost as central in the country as you can possibly be, and as far south as you can possibly be, whilst maintaining that central sort of line. But yeah, I don't know how Sainsbury's do.
Yeah, because I know Morrison's made a point of saying that they would be little islands, right? Of like, our craft brews will be locally sourced, so you'll get a different thing. That's what they claimed when they first did it.
They might have said that, but that's definitely not true. So the fish ponds Morrison's here in Bristol carry independence from Bristol Beer Factory.
Yep.
That is, I think, the only local beer they carry. Everything else is like Yorkshire, and Morrison's is like a Yorkshire company, right? So it is Northern Monk, and a lot of Northern Monk, and obviously Brewdog, and a bunch of other kind of breweries that you're seeing more in that larger volume in the supermarkets. A bit of North as well, and a couple of others. So. Yeah, they don't really do that local thing. Co-op's the best, or at least some co-op stores are really good for that, and will carry a local line, even though they've only got like 6 beers in. And the co-op down the road from me is one of the stores that just doesn't do that.
Right.
So it is just like Vocation and Brewdog and Wheat Beer Number 1 and a couple of other beers in there, and Sainsbury's seem to be doing every time I go in, there's some different beers in, so they seem to be rotating through beers quite swiftly. So there's almost something new every time I go in, but I'm only going in maybe every 6 months.
That might be not a good barometer for cycling often.
Yeah,
but at least it's not the same beers. Like, it's not like they just have these standing contracts, is what you're saying.
Yeah, completely. It's not the same beer. Even every 6 months. Okay, a beer probably has, a shelf life of 6 months. Lots of beers put 6 months on their shelf life. So suddenly it goes in, and 6 months later they're like, right, get rid of all of those. Anything we haven't sold is just gone, and we're getting a bunch of new beers instead.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think that's us then for episode 322. Thank you. If you'd like to get hold of us, we are Tanked Up Cast on the socials. If you're on Twitch, and you should be, come and join us on our new recording day, a Thursday. I say new, historic recording day was the Thursday. We've then switched to a Tuesday. We then went to a Wednesday. We're back to Thursdays now because, of course, we just roll through the week, try every different day. But come and join us over on Twitch on a Thursday evening, where we record 2 episodes, and those of you here will hopefully stick around with us. We'll launch straight into the next episode. If you want to get hold of us each individually, you can get me at Nova_47 and Aadil at
the Omniarch.
Come and join us, and hit one of us up if you want to chat to us on the daily in our Discord as well, which is kind of like where we live on the internet, really.
Yeah. You can also catch some of our previous guests who've all joined us. The more beery ones tend to hang out in #beer. Surprisingly, no one. But yeah, come join. Also, for those of you on Twitch or who have Amazon Prime or Twitch, don't forget that every month you get a free sub that you can give to any creator. So even if you don't have Twitch, just go to Subway's channel. I mean, we wouldn't mind if it was us, but just spend Bezos's money on content creation. And obviously, like, share, subscribe, follow, get the word out about us so we can see more people and get more stuff to chat about.
Absolutely. And if you're listening and you're within the Bristol area, give us a shout. We will be going to the Bristol Craft Beer Festival coming up next month.
June?
It's in about 4 or 5 weeks, roughly.
Yeah.
Early June. Yeah. So
I had a brief panic because I was like, wait, have I double booked?
Yeah.
Because I have a friend's first hour comedy show in Cambridge on the 24th of May. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think. I was like, I don't have anything going. Of course I'll do this. And I was like, wait, I didn't think about the one like actual thing coming up. Is that the same day?
No,
it's fine.
I think it's the second weekend of June, and we'll probably have Tom from We Are Beer back on the podcast. In a couple of weeks,
Coming up
just
closer
before,
to then, yeah.
just before the Bristol Craft Beer Festival as well. So look forward to that. Those of you on Twitch, look forward to our next episode, which we will launch into in a moment. For those of you listening to us, we'll see you in a few days. We've been tagged up. Bye bye.
Ciao.
www.outoflives.net